Hello friends, welcome again. This is Daria 3x Point. In this session, we'll be talking about joins. I'll be introducing you to a concept called joins. So before we go deep into all of that, I'd like to introduce you formally into AdventureWorks. I know you downloaded and installed AdventureWorks at the beginning of this training, and we haven't really touched it ever since. But starting from this video, we will be working with AdventureWorks. And again, I'd like to give you a little tip on how to do some troubleshooting in case you are having difficulty sometimes in connecting to SQL Server. So before we go into joins, let's bring up my SSMS. So I would imagine you have yours inside a VMware, a virtualization tool. So I'm assuming you're inside your VMware and now you're trying to connect. So if I try to connect now, you would see that it's not connecting. And this happens sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when you restart your computer, you might find yourself in a situation where you have this kind of error that says a network related or instance specific error occurred while establishing a connection to SQL Server, and you find out you won't be able to do that. So to resolve this problem, if you're using Windows 10 like I am, you could just go to the search bar and type in SQL Configuration Manager. As you can see, I have SQL Server Configuration Manager coming up here. If you don't, you can actually, if you don't use Windows 10, you can navigate by going to, okay, not that, apps. Yeah, that's it. You can go to apps there, and I'm looking for Microsoft SQL Server. Yeah, that's it. 2014. So if you're not using Windows 10, you can go to the start menu and then try to navigate to all I think it's all programs. That's Windows 7 or something, but they all follow similar structure. But just try to go to programs and locate Microsoft SQL Server 2014, and then you'll see SQL Server Configuration Manager here, and then you can click it. So when that comes up, you would look for the name of your installation. So the default one is MS SQL Server. As you can see, the state here is stopped. So you can just right click and start. And while that comes up, you can actually close this up, click OK, and now try to connect. And you can see that it connected. So sometimes when the services stop like that, that's what you need to do to get it back. Right. So before I go into joins again, let me quickly introduce you to AdventureWorks. So AdventureWorks is it's a company that manufactures and sells bicycle. So it looks like a proper database, an OLTP database for a company. It doesn't exist. It's a virtual company, and it's a database that Microsoft provides for things like this, for testing purposes and for writing SQL queries, and be to be able to play around with data. So we they have two flavors. So one is the OLTP version, and OLTP means online transactional processing, which is the kind of database that is used for day-to-day transactions like your banking application, or in Tesco or Sainsbury or any of the supermarkets. You do transaction on a very consistent and constant basis daily. And there's AdventureWorks Data Warehouse as well, which is a data warehouse database, and the schema and the whole design is actually modeled like a data warehouse. So we will also do some um, training on data warehousing uh, along the line. I'll introduce you to data warehousing proper. So, but for now, just understand that there are two types. So for now, I know you do have the OLTP version, which does not have the DW in its name. So we're not looking at the DW, we're looking at this one. So if you click on the plus sign there and go into tables, you can now see that it has a structure that has been well defined using schemas. So you would see there are different departments in the company, and they've tried to name the schemas um, to represent the department. So you can see here we have human resources dot department. So the actual name of the table is department. It's just that it's been contained inside the human resources schema. So there's the department, employee, employee department history, employee pay history, job candidate, shift. These are all human resources related. And there is the person as well. So anything person represents person, an individual, as you can imagine. So there's address for individual, there's person, which is like a table that stores all the names and let's go into the columns and see what sort of data is in it. So it stores all the names, the title, email and demographics for an individual. So this is the table that holds that. So there's phone number and all of that. So there's the production as well, there's the purchasing, and there is the sales. So if you need to go into any of the table, you have to call the name of the table by prefixing it with the schema name. And remember, our concept of schemas is just a container that is used to organize the tables, right? If you don't specify a schema when you're creating a new table, there's a default schema called the DBO. So in this case, they have actually created these tables by putting them into the schemas, by mentioning the schemas in the syntax that was used to create the tables. So for example, if we wanted to have a look at the script that was used to create this department table, I can right click this table and go to script table as, and go to create to new query editor window. So by doing this, you would be able to see the create statement that was used to create this table. So ignore all these exec statements there. Let's just focus on this part. So you can see create table human resources dot department. So that's how this table was created. If they didn't specify human resources and they did create table, it would have created by default into the DBO schema. So this is just a reminder for you. I know we've done all this in the past. So there, in this session, we'll be using two tables, and those two tables are person and employee. Where is employee? Yeah, so these two tables. So let's actually see what's inside. Select top 1000. This is the employee table, and if I go to the person, so select top 1000 rows, this is the person table. So we'll be using these two tables to explain the concept of joins. So I'm going to minimize this and go into our slide first, and then we'll come back to that. All right, so what do we mean by joins? Joins are ways to combine two or more tables together and present the data as one. So think about the two tables that I've just shown you, the person and the employee table. They're put separate tables, but if you wanted to bring data from both table and present it as one, how would you do it? The best way to do it, or the only way to actually do it, is by using joins. So there are different types of joins, and that's what we have listed here, which is the inner join, the left join, right join, full outer join, cross join. We'll be looking at each of these joins in detail. Now, warning, this concept of joins is something that confuses a lot of people, but trust me, I'm gonna simplify it for you, and you will understand what exactly it is, how it's being used, and we will eliminate all manner of confusion that may come out of this. So if you're familiar with the concept of joins before, and you're not all that clear, don't worry. This series will actually bring out all the clarity for you, so that you will no longer be confused about the concept of joins. So in this video right now, we will focus on inner join. So forget about every other one you're looking at. Okay, so I'm actually gonna pretend like they're not there, and let's focus on inner join. And this is the best way in which you would understand join better, by focusing on each of them in isolation, and having understood them in isolation, then we can come back to them and try to play around with all of them together. So that's the best approach to learning join, and you'll see what I mean by that by the time we start writing the query. So there are certain things you I would expect you to already know before we go into joins. So the first one is the top keyword. So I know I haven't actually officially introduced you to the top keyword. It's a very simple concept. I'll introduce it to you before we start. So you need to understand this top, so that because we'll be working with it, so that's why I need you to understand it. Then primary and foreign keys, I would expect that you already understand that. And alias, I would expect that you already know what an alias does. All right, so inner join. What do we mean by inner join? It returns only the matching rows between the tables in the statement. So any non-matching rows are eliminated. So let's say we're given two tables, like I showed you just now, the person and the employee table. So look at these two circles. So assume that the one on the left is the person, and the one on the right is the employee. If we say we want to use inner join, what we're saying is we want data that is common to both of them. All right, so that's just what inner join means. So let me bring up these two tables now. So if you look at the person table, if you look, let me remove this top. All right, so top is just to say bring back the top figure, the top number of rows from the table. So let me quickly introduce you to that concept. So if I said return top 5, what I'm saying is just give me the top 5. So even though there may be thousands of rows on this table, if I said give me top 1, what I'm just saying is just give me the first one on the table. So if I said top 1000, then give me the top 1000. All right, so that's all you need to know about top, nothing more, right? Except for the fact that if you do top 100%, there's another way of returning data. So you can do top 100%, so which means you can return back a percentage of the data set. So top 100% means everything on the table. So if I said top 50%, I mean half of the entire data in the table. So if I say top 10%, so that's it, nothing more about top. All right, so moving on. So let's return everything from this table. Select star, select no no select everything. So we're not doing top. So the reason we're not using star is because we have actually specified all the columns to be returned. So select everything from the table. So you can see we have 19,972 rows on this table. And another way to know how many rows we have in a table is by using the count function. So select count, we could do star from the table. So this is all we have. We have 19,972 rows on this table. If we look at the employee table, on the other hand, we have 290. Let's remove the top. We have 290. All right. Okay. A little more introduction about this table. This person table is just a place where a number of um, people's data are stored. So in this company, they store all their employee details on this person table. They also store all their customers details, their names and everything on this table. Contractors, they have the suppliers, and you can see that's the reason why they have this much number of records on the table, 19,000 plus, because all these people you're looking at with their names, they are employee, contractors, suppliers, everybody that has one stake or the other with the company. This is where you store all their data. Everything is just stored in here. All right. So, but the employee table, on the other hand, is like, say, a subset of the person table. So these 290 rows actually do exist here. So they're just mixed up here. Every one of them are just mixed up here. And from your concept, from your understanding of primary and foreign keys, let's see if they actually have a relationship. So you can see on the person table, this business entity ID is the primary key, right? And let's see, employee, we can see that business entity ID is also the primary key and foreign key here. Similarly, that's what it is on person table as well, because if you look at it again, it's PK and FK. So it's possible for you to have a column to be the primary key and also a foreign key. So if it's also a foreign key, that means it's primary key somewhere and it is represented as a foreign key here. At the same time, it is a primary key here and someone else is using it somewhere else as the foreign key. I hope that makes sense. So this is just one of the rare cases where you find things like this, but ideally you would see things like whereby we'll have the business entity ID will be a primary key here, and then here it will be the foreign key. But in this case, they have designed it to be a primary key here and also a foreign key, and also it is a primary key and foreign key here as well. So but what I want you to focus on at the moment is the fact that on this person table it is a primary key and it is a corresponding foreign key on the employee table. Okay, so don't get confused, just maintain what I've just said now. So forget the fact that it is both primary key and foreign key on both tables. Just see it as primary key here and foreign key there. Okay, so coming back into the table, so what we're saying in essence is on this person table it is a primary key here, and on this employee table it is a foreign key here. So what that means is for every foreign key here there is a primary key here, right? So this business entity ID 1, this row here, actually represents this same data here, which is business entity ID 1. All right. So if you look at the employee table, you can see we don't have the first name, the last name, and everything. All we have is job title. Actually, let's remove some columns so that we can simplify the view of this data. Let's remove some columns because certain columns are not actually, we're not interested in them. So now, so we have job title, birth dates, marital status, gender, and the dates they were hired, but we don't have their name. And on this table we do have their names. So let's also remove some columns here that are not needed. Okay. All right. So here we have the title, the first name. Let's remove person type too. Right. So we have the title, first name, middle name, and last name. So the task at hand is to bring everything together. We want a table that contains their first name, last name, and as well their job title and everything else that represents this person. Okay, and you see the reason why we can join these two tables together is because they have a column that is common to both of them, which is the business entity ID. If they did not have a common column like this, it wouldn't be possible for us to join them together. Now, you need to also understand that it you don't need to have primary or foreign key specified before you can join two tables together. All right. So let's say we have business entity ID here. We also have business entity ID here, but there are no primary or foreign keys. We can still join them together because they contain the same data. So it has one here, it has one here, we're good. That's what we mean by that, regardless if there is primary key or foreign key specified. All right, but if there is, then it's all well and good. So the fact that there is primary key and foreign key is just a way of saying there is integrity on the database. Integrity in the sense that there will be no data here in the foreign key table that does not exist here. All right, that's what the primary and foreign key does for us. So for example, if we try to put in on this business entity ID, if we try to put in a record that does not exist here, right, it will throw an error. But if there was no primary key and foreign key relationship, it will allow it to go in there. So that's just basically what primary key and foreign key does for us. Okay, so but if we didn't have them, we will still be able to join the two tables together as long as they have the same data on them, which is the business entity ID. All right, so let's do a little bit more of coding so that you can see how join is being implemented. Right, so now the task is bring everything together as one. Business entity ID, first name, middle name, last name, and job title, birth date, marital status. So that's what we need to do. So to do this, we need to start writing the query by saying select, and the next thing you want to do is identify the tables first. So where are the two tables coming from? They're coming from person. Okay, all right, so I'm going to remove this. I'm sure you understand what this means. That's the name of the database. So as long as we are in the context of the database, then we're okay to remove that. We just have to make sure that we have the person and the person, and this person is the schema. So that's all that matters. All right, so because we want to join two tables together, we will say inner join. And what's the other table we're joining? Human resources dot employee. So this is how to join them together. Now remember I said the reason why we can join them together is because they have a common column, right? So what is that common column? It is the business entity ID. So we need it. So the syntax will be, after we've joined both tables together, you now say on, then you specify the column. So I will say person.person dot business entity ID equals Then you now take the business entity ID from this table as well. Dot business entity ID. Okay, so this is all you need to do. Join them together and get the common column between both of them, and you're done. So the next thing you need to do is just specify the columns that you want. That's all. So once you do this, you run it together, you will see all your data come back in one piece, rather than opening two separate sessions and selecting this separately, selecting this separately, and having the data presented in two separate places. No, what we want is to have them in one singular place. So to now bring back our columns, now because we are selecting from two separate tables, we have to fully qualify the columns so that SQL Server understands from which table you are bringing back data. So for example, if I said business entity ID, let's say this is the only column I want to select back, and I run it now, you will see this kind of error that says ambiguous column name business entity ID. The reason is because SQL Server is saying business entity ID exists here. It also exists here. Which one of them do you want me to return to you? Right? So you have to help SQL Server to identify which business entity ID from both tables it should use. Right? So if I said give me the business entity ID of person table, then I have to tell it that okay, I want the one from this table. That's what I need. And then put a dot to separate them. And if I click now execute, you can see that it now brings back the data that I want. Right? So that's how to do it. Okay. So let's say I'm not interested in the business entity ID. Let's say I'm actually interested in something else, which is the title. If I set title and I hit execute, you can see that without fully qualifying title, it brought back the data and it did throw that error. The reason is because title exists only on one table. So it's easy for SQL Server to check both tables and say, oh, right, okay, it exists only here. So there's no need to sort out the ambiguity. I'll just pick the one that exists on just one table and that's it. So if I wanted first name as well, I could just execute and you can see it's now bringing back the data that I want. So if I wanted middle name, you see, so we're getting all the data we want. If I wanted last name, right. So let's now take something else from the other table, which is from the employee table. So we want the job title. So if I wanted job title, you can see now that one who happens to be Ken J. Sanchez on this table, which is Ken J. Sanchez, he owns this business entity ID 1. If we go into the other table, we can see business entity ID 1 is Chief Executive Officer. And if you look at the joint table, you can see that we have Chief Executive Officer. The reason why SQL Server could understand this was because of the on clause here, which is the common column between both of them. So it could see that, okay, number one here is Ken and number one here is Chief Executive. So it just intelligently brings back the data for you to say, right, first name, middle name, last name, job title for one, this is the data, and it returns it. And that's it. That's pretty much join. You know, a lot of people learn joins from different ways, and because of the non in-depth way of learning it, it becomes kind of complex to understand. If you can take your time to learn it just as I have explained to you, trust me, it will be very easy to understand and you won't have any confusion whatsoever. So let's bring back some more data. So if we wanted the marital status and gender, we could just say marital status and gender and say execute. So now we have all our data. You can actually click on this right here, right click on it, copy with headers, and bring up your Excel. Let's bring out our Excel. Okay, and paste it. Let's paste it in Excel. Oops. Okay, it's expired. I need to bring up another one. Okay, Excel 2010. So if we expand this and paste, you can see now that we now have our data in Excel. See, so data from two different tables now exist as just one table, and you can save it and do whatever you want to do with it. All right, so this is all I need you to know about joins for now. In the next video we will start going into a little more deeper things, nothing different from what you've seen, but we just need to get more familiarized with our join syntax and different ways in which we can achieve the same thing. All right, see you in the next clip.